to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
Hello, all Antiochian men in the Diocese of Miami in the Southeast. This is Michael Bocklig again. I'm here with Father Hans for another episode of Ask Father Hans. Good morning, Father Hans.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning, Antiochian men.
We have another question for you today, Father, and this is a big one. This is one that I've heard a lot of people confused about, so I'm hoping to hear your response. I'm really looking forward to that. Here's the question. I have heard many different perspectives on the friendship between King David and Jonathan. What does the Orthodox Church teach us about that friendship, and how can we apply those lessons in our friendships with other men today?
That is a big question. It's a big question, and the whole David and Jonathan thing has been taken over by the gay activists, unfortunately, right? To justify what they call, to justify, it's a dicey topic, but I'm going to jump into it. All right. Justify homosexual activity. First of all, men were not made to copulate with other men. All right. And to elevate that kind of aberration as normal goes against Scripture, and which is to say, it goes against the way nature is created. All right. And it's a revolt against nature. But I'm not here to get polemical on that issue, but I'm going to be very clear about that. Now, moving forward, but still on that train of thought, you look and you read the Apostle Paul, and there were people who were engaged in homosexual relationships that came into the church.
Right.
But he says they can be healed of that. And they can be healed of that. So the relationship between David and Jonathan, see, we carry all this cultural baggage with us. That's the first thing that we think of. So successful has been the propaganda. Or you could say another thing, so deep is the confusion about what human relationships are really to be like, how they're designed, how they're created by God, and especially the relationship between men. Now, David said, Jonathan died, and David went into deep grief over his death. He loved Jonathan. He said the love he had for Jonathan was sweeter than the love of a woman. You think about that. Guys, you're listening to this, don't sexualize what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. The sexualization of this is just because the propaganda in the culture has seeped into our thinking. Now, I think that's a great tragedy, because I think most men are very lonely, and they're really lonely for the love of other men, the communion of other men. And that loneliness and that ache for that, the desire for that, again, do not think of this. I know what's going on in your head. I know what you're hearing, because I can feel it as I speak. All right? I can feel it. It has nothing to do with homosexuality. It has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with that at all. Men need other men. And men need the love of other men poured into their hearts. In fact, if you take this a step farther, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot the last 3 and 4 weeks, men need the love of a father. And I think that before we can experience the love of God, the Father in heaven, we first have to experience the love of a human father. This could be our natural father. It can be a spiritual father. It has to be an older man. But if a man can experience the love of a father, if the father can pour his love into the son, it posits the son as son in relationship to the Father, and thus posits him as a man. Because the relationship of men to men it's a relationship, okay? It's a positioning, not of two individuals kind of like bumping into each other, but it's a relationship. And we are all relational beings, and we are created to be in relationship. You come from a mother and a father. For many of us, that was not perfect, but still think that's where you come from. None of us spontaneously generated. We came from people. We're born into a community. We come from other people. You come from your mother, and you come from your father. And somehow in that miraculous thing that happens at your conception, God is there too. God is there too. But men grow up isolated. And you can see this, in high schools. It's one of the reasons we've got such trouble, especially among young men. I mean, some guys, blow up their schools, other guys commit suicide. Is because of that isolation, because there is no real relationship. And then you add to it too, that, okay, so any kind of affection that is shown between men is deemed homosexual. The barriers to real communion and friendship between men grow exponentially, because nobody wants to really live like that, right? They really don't. And so this is what we face. Now, for a long time, I mean, I speak to these things very directly, but for a long time, I went back and forth. How do I speak about this? And I've decided I'm just going to speak about this directly, and I really don't care if I get heat from people on it. I really don't, because we have to restore this. We have to restore communion between men. Okay, because the communion and the bond between men, and look at David and Jonathan properly, not in terms of homosexual activism, because they love to use that story to homosexualize relationships, but no, in terms of friendship and bonds between men, right? And you begin to see that if I can have this kind of relationship and intimacy with friends, real, authentic, clean intimacy with friends, I am strengthened by that, and I am fulfilled by that. There's a beautiful, you can look it up on YouTube, the soliloquy, Shakespeare's soliloquy on St. Crispin's Day. Look it up, and look how the king rallies the troops. And how does he rally the troops? He rallies the troops by calling together his men as a band of brothers. That's where that phrase comes from, a band of brothers, right? The movie with Tom Hanks, but The title comes from Shakespeare. It used to be that this is the way that men really lived. No wonder they won wars, right? No matter they found the valor and the courage to fight. They were fighting for each other. I think even today, probably the only place you find that anymore, well, you can find it among men who work together closely, build things, but you also find it in the military. I mean, I've asked guys, they re-signed for continuous tours in Iraq and that type of place, right? Why did you do it? I said, because of the brotherhood, they would say. Those are about the only two places you could find
Yeah,
that.
Father. And I'd also bring up that in some sports, like football, for example, that's maintained in football, where you're in a team sport with other men, and you're there for that guy that's right next to you on the field as well.
Yeah. And, I've had friends like that in my life. We were just, what kept me on the straight and narrow in college, and I had a good friend, his name's Keith. He became a doctor, I became a priest. We're still great friends, but we held each other up, okay? We just held each other up. We were there for each other. And that kept me on the straight and narrow. It really did. I had to lose my life for my friend Keith. He lost his life for me, right? And we held each other up. And it was a beautiful friendship. And so I got through school, and it was, I think, my first real taste of brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're still very close friends today. We still are that friendship. He lives in Seattle, I live in Florida, we live in other parts of the country, but we're still connected. We still talk, and that type of thing. This is what's exemplified in the relationship between David and Jonathan. And I would say it is blessed by God. Why is it blessed by God? Because this is the way he created relationships between men to be. There is nothing sexual about that. Put that aside. But men are created to love and be loved by other men. And guys, as you're listening to me, like I said, I know what's coming into the mind, but that's programming. Throw it out. Throw it out. All of us experience a deep measure of loneliness because we don't have this. But in the church, we can cultivate it, and we can grow stronger through it and by it.
Open to me the doors of repentance, O life giver, for my soul goes early to the temple of thy holiness, coming in the temple of my body, holy polluted.